Hey everybody, it's Dan Abbate here. Good to see y'all again. I've got a nice list of questions here, and we can just jump into those questions and see where it takes us. All right, so here we go. First question comes from Lisa Nitkowski. How do you bridge the gap of wanting to start a business to actually starting the business? I'm currently reading as many books as I can in regards to taking the leap and getting my business going. However, I am wondering how to put the elements together to actually get it started. Where do you start? What comes first? What are the steps? Where's the blueprint? As so many of you successfully started and run companies, who better to ask? Thanks in advance. All right, Lisa, that's a good question. So, if I was just going to go over my process, I would start with the business model, right? So, when I say business model, I don't mean like a business model that you make for the bank with all of your projections and your pro forma and all this stuff that's kind of like just like a stuff that's like superfluous that you put together strictly for the bank. What I would do is I just come up with a hypothesis of how I'm going to drive value for my potential customers and who my market is, right? Just in general, it doesn't have to be very like academic or like lots of research at that point. Just like an idea, like I think I can drive value for these people by doing this activity. And then the next thing I do is I test it. Like a lot of times, what I've made this mistake many times, and I see a lot of other entrepreneurs make this mistake way too often, and at big levels too, a big scale, is that we have a tendency to focus on the stuff that we can do because we're excited about the idea. And so we just start doing that stuff. And then what ends up happening is we do all that stuff and we get it all set up and then we present it to the market. And then what happens is we were wrong, or even a little bit wrong, or a lot of it wrong. It doesn't matter. We're wrong. And so we spent all that time building something that nobody really wanted, or nothing, and that wasn't really scalable. So what I do now, after years of doing it the wrong way, is I like to test what I want to do before I really fully build it out. So what I'll do is I'll come up with the idea and I'll get a rough idea of like, okay, this is what it is and this is who it is and this is the price that I want to put on it. And I don't have any of it set up, right? I can't fulfill anything. I just want to start putting it out there. And I create the image that it exists. And with the online stuff and websites and all that stuff, you can do that relatively cheaply. Like real, it has to look like it's real. Um, and then I just put it out there and see what happens. And very quickly, all the time, it never works the first time. So it's a good thing I didn't build it first because then I would have been stuck with it. And so anyway, so that's my recommendation is don't spend too much time overthinking it. Who's your market? What value you're going to drive for them, and then go ahead and test it. Put it out to them. Because what you'll also find is sometimes good ideas and good products and services that drive great value, if you can't connect with the audience, even if it's a great thing, it doesn't work because you can't connect to the audience in a cost efficient way. The ads of how you connect with them doesn't work, or you don't have a good idea of how to connect with them. So that's where you need to put your focus, is on where to connect with them and how to connect with them. And it really ends up not being about the product or the service, because you can relatively figure that out pretty easy. It becomes, how do you connect with the with the audience. The marketing, or the book that I've recommended before is the goal, about the theory of constraints. And you have to identify that constraint as early on as possible so that you're not running around creating all this excess capacity in your operations or the product or service or whatever you're building, and then you can't get it out to people. So you need to identify what that constraint is. Is the constraint your advertising cost, because that market is so saturated that all the cost of ads and everything are driven up so high that it's impossible to make any margin on your potential business. It's basically just that testing ahead of time to make sure before you build everything out. So I'll probably say that again because I read through some of the questions ahead of time, and that comes up quite a few times. So it's all about business model and testing that business model ahead of time. And of course, I'm always available. Reach out through AO if you want to talk to me about any of this stuff. I'm happy to schedule some time to just talk through this in real life and hear actually about what you're doing. And then maybe that'll also, I'd be able to give some good, helpful hints. Okay. Next question. Keenan Galambos. while waiting for my first prototypes to be made and sent to me, what are some other things I should be doing for my business? We are creating and selling products to help gamers be more comfortable and focus on their performance and skill in games so they can play better for longer. Long-term goals include working with players as professional athletes in esports tournaments, providing them with the products they need to help secure a win. Awesome. Okay, so this is a great lead in from the last question. Uh, what you should be doing right now is putting your products out there. Start marketing your products. Start putting them out there. Even if you don't have them, try to drive traffic to the however you're going to sell them. I'm assuming it's going to be some sort of online thing. Start that process. Don't wait. Just even though you don't have them in hand, try to make a sale. Try to get somebody's credit card information so that you could charge it. Like try to make it happen, because until somebody actually gives you the money, you don't know if you can actually sell what it is you're making. So wouldn't you rather know that you need to tweak something now before you're like fully invested up in manufacturing? You can, I can produce 10,000, units a day. Well, it doesn't matter. I can't sell one. So start testing now. Don't wait. That would be my suggestion there. And also, esports is a great industry to be in at this point too. There's a lot going on there that's really cool, as that industry is like just blowing up. I'm actually friends with a guy and a group that is like they've got like an NFL style centralized organization going that to set up the tournaments. So so that the cities actually own their franchises and all that sort of stuff. It's pretty cool. So anyway, yes. So yes, same as the first question. Don't wait to get to the selling part. That's probably going to be the constraint. So if you identify that and just keep working on that, you're going to be able to, tweak your products quicker because you're getting feedback from the market and not just thinking of it off the top of your head. So start marketing, start selling now, even if you can't deliver. All right, next question. Christopher Joseph. Do you have recommended books or resources for building up my inner salesman foundations? I have very little sales experience, if any at all. I am building software for streaming/gaming industry, another gaming industry, and I'm looking to pitch for a letter of intent. I know it services a pain point, but I still have to be able to present and speak properly if I am to get a letter of intent for potential use. So resources for general sales, software sales, gaming, entertainment sales, etc., or building myself up, public speaking confidence are all welcome. Thank you in advance. Okay, so I do have a couple suggestions on this one. The first suggestion that I have is the first question that I have is that, or the first answer I have is that when you're taking when you're worried about sales, you got to get focused on sales, right? So with the book that I recommend for that is by from a guy named Jack Daly, and the name of the book is The Sales Playbook for Hyper Sales Growth. So like that's the book that I would recommend. Jack Daly is an awesome sales guy. He's got, from being the sales guy himself all the way through sales manager and kind of explaining what the difference between those two things are. Like from a sales organization, that's a key component to the whole effort. As far as like how do you yourself become more comfortable in sales, it sounds like there's two different things. It's interesting that you're talking about public speaking and confidence and all that stuff. So you got to start there, obviously. So if since you put that in your question, I would think that is something that you need to stay focused on. So what my recommendation on that is because I have some experience on this, is improv theater. You probably have seen that show, that old show, Whose Line Is It Anyway, back, 15, 20 years ago, whatever it is. That's kind of like the most famous version of it. But improv theater, if there's an improv place in your area, wherever you are, sign up and take a class for that, because it's a lot of fun, for one. And for two, it just gives you the opportunity to think on your feet, to talk on your feet, to kind of get used to being in front of an audience, and just to do it over and over again. I mean, for me, the best opportunity to get better at something is to practice. And you can't really be out pitching every day. I mean, ideally you could, but then it's live, so you'd rather practice in a non low pressure environment. So if you take an improv theater course, it's a great way to kind of get that that public speaking confidence and to just be comfortable in front of people. And it's a lot of fun too. So that's what I would recommend on that side. So hyper sales growth for the book, and then take an improv class. That'll be fun. All right. Francisca Nicasio. How do you deal with the possibility of your employees, contractors stealing your customers? I own a copywriting business and I'm always hiring freelancers to deliver on content projects. I sometimes worry that they might approach my existing clients and offer to handle their content needs for less. Okay, so this is a good question. So in any business, there's a risk that your employees will try to steal your clients, I guess. That risk becomes lower the more complex your business gets. If your business is super easy to replicate and they can just skip over you, then that's that. So there's two things. So there's the legal side of it, right? So you can have them sign their non-circumvent, non-solicitation, non-competes, all that stuff, which you should be doing anyway, right? So when you make an agreement, you should have an independent contractor agreement with them, which outlines, what your relationship is, how they get paid, how they're not supposed to steal your clients, and all that sort of stuff. And then for the most part, that probably does the trick. Even if some of it is, like in Florida, for example, non-competes are hard to enforce. But the non-circumvent, non-solicitations are pretty enforceable. So that's all good. And so you could do it on the legal side. But I think on the more practical side, if you have a business model that is super hard to replicate, so like it's not so easy for them to just take the client because your business adds some extra value on top of it that the client wants, as opposed to just whatever this person is providing. If you're just a middleman connecting two people and you don't add any value, then it's a lot easier for them to steal the client than if you were adding something on top that this person can't easily replicate. So that's kind of in the business model. We need to have a business model that is unique and really drives value. And then another thing you can do is on the employee side, on the writer side, is make sure you give them consistent work, right? Like, so if you're able to really become an important part of their financial life, where you're really providing them a lot of clients, they're not going to steal the clients because they don't want to burn the future bridges of new clients, because they know that it's, clients come and go. They're not going to potentially burn the relationship with you if they know that there's always kind of more work coming. So probably the more successful you can be and the more that you can give them some attention from a financial perspective by giving them a lot of work, then they're less likely to to try anything like that. And honestly, if you have people that are really doing that sort of stuff, you need to weed them out anyway, because if it's just it's not the right thing to do. So if you have people that'll do that, then it's probably not. They'll do other things that you haven't even thought of yet that maybe isn't what you want in your business. So so you can follow the legal route, or you can build a business model that adds more value for the client, or more value for the employee, or both. And then in that case, you probably really limited the issue. Okay, Michael Playlay. How do you know who to hire next? A service manager or a salesperson? We've taken a big hit this year. I need both positions, but I need more sales to keep a service manager busy. Where can I find a salesperson to make sure they are a good fit for my team and my needs? Could it be possible to find a person that could do both positions until they only fill the service position? My answer to that is no. I don't think you can. If you want someone who can, like if you want to give a service person some sort of sales responsibility, kind of as part of like what they do, just sort of in general, that's fine. Like if it's just 10 or 20% of what they have to do. But if you really want a salesperson, that salesperson has to be dedicated. I think that's one of the problems that we as entrepreneurs, as we're growing our businesses, where we screw up, is that we try to put in an effort to try to save money on payroll, which I totally understand the need to do it. Like, I'm not saying it's not true. What we end up doing is we end up putting too many hats on one person and too many expectations on one person. And then we have divergent requirements within the same person. Like, you have to be an outgoing hunter-killer sales guy who's going to go out and drive business every single day in between doing the actual work of the engineer who has to actually do the hands-on work. So how do you do those two things well? Like, you're probably not going to do what ends up happening all the time in that situation is they end up doing the work side of it because they can do that with their hands and they can get it done, and now it's done, and then that's the end of it. Where because the sales side is much more open-ended, more nebulous, it's a lot easier to get distracted by the other side. And also from your perspective as a manager, you end up holding the person accountable probably to the operational stuff more than the sales side, because you need to get the operational stuff done. So, well, they're doing such a good job there and they're not doing so great on the sales. And then consequently, if you say they're not doing so great on the sales, then they're just not doing the sales and you don't really have a salesperson anyway. So I would say if you need to hire one of those two people and you need sales, then you need to focus on the sales, however you end up doing that. That's where your focus needs to be in the short term, because without sales, you can't pay for anything and you can't grow. So you, again, theory of constraints, you have to focus on the constraint to the business. And in this case, it sounds like it's sales, because that's going to be the harder one. I think, generally speaking, of those two, that's going to be the harder one to work. So that's my thought on that one. Next question, Eric Blandino. I love the idea of doing something fun with our team for 2 hours during work time once a month in the form of leadership games, escape rooms, etc. Is this something to be done monthly, bi-monthly, or quarterly? We are a rat exclusion service company and our techs mostly work in the field independently. There are times we work together on larger projects. I'm asking this question because I want the techs to learn, bond, and have fun, but not lose the lessons that are being discovered on how to work with each other by the games, if frequent or not. Okay, so you're focusing on culture is really what you're doing. You're building culture. You're building culture. So you want to have these outings, right? These cultural outings that happen every day. And I assume that you're doing this because you want to have a group of people who are dedicated to the company and dedicated to each other and are happy in their work and are providing maximum value for the money that you pay them, right? So you're paying them to do work, but you're not only paying them to do work, you're paying them to do a better version of that work than you could if you hired somebody else, right? Because we want our employees to be better than everyone else's employees. And so they can either come in like that, that's part of the hiring process, and or you can maintain and foster that through the culture of your company. So your idea of doing something to facilitate that is great. Now the question is that, does this happen? Like, I don't know the rest of your structure of your company or kind of what your culture is already, but as such, does your company have a culture in that outside of these games, there's a specific way of operating, of behaving with, is the culture reinforced every single day? Because it really doesn't matter how many times you guys go out and do these group efforts. If the internal operations of the culture or of the company are not facilitating the existence of the culture, then it's still not going to accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So I would say, aside from deciding the frequency of these outings, which might be fun, I'd also look at the daily operations of the company and how does your culture manifest on a daily basis within the company, and put a lot of thought into that, because now that's happening and that's being reinforced every minute of every day. And then there's these other things that we do on top of it as well. That's probably where I would start with that, just from like a thought perspective. And again, this culture is a huge topic, and I'm of course happy to help facilitate any conversations you want to have about that. Like I guess I could just give a super quick example. I recently helped a company redevelop their entire sales department. I've talked about it before, and their sales department was spread out all over the state. They weren't all in one place, and they're still not all in one place. But the difference is that the first thing I did when I brought them together was I told them, oh, this is a good hint. You got to tell people why they're doing stuff. Just taking them out for like a leadership game, like that's fine. but they'll just go, oh, that was fun. But if you talk to them, this is a true thing. If you talk to them and tell them we're doing this because this is the thing that drives culture, and culture is important because of this, and then you show them all the numbers, and you show them all the research, and you explain all that stuff to them, get them really to understand it. So that's what I did with this sales team. I got them to understand why it's important that we work as a group, and why it's important that our culture in our sales group is connected, and we work as a team, and you guys make decisions. I don't make decisions. The bosses don't make decisions. We don't, it all comes from you guys. And so like, that was the culture that I wanted to create in the group. I told them why we were doing that, and we did it. And that was 6 months ago, and they are killing it right now. Like before before management was having to complain to them about why aren't sales this way, how do we get the higher prices, blah, blah, blah. Now they're thinking of all that stuff themselves. Now I also implemented a different incentive program, and there were some other things that kind of, you wrap these cultural initiatives in to help get that result. But you want to get to the point where people are doing the work for you, doing the thinking for you, ideally, is where you want to get to. A lot of times we focus on getting them to do the work, but we don't think about getting them to do the thinking for us. And that's really the objective, is how do you get the lowest levels of your company to all the way to the top, to really be thinking about the good of the business. I've recommended this book before, but I don't know where it is on my shelf here. Turn That Ship Around by Marquette. It's a great book that talks about building culture and building a group of people who will really take ownership of the company. So yeah, culture is a very deep question. Okay, next one. Alexander Lee. Given only 2 hours per day, what are the most impactful things you would do each day over the next year to grow a brand new fitness training business? I'm a fitness trainer for golfers and looking to grow. I'm brand new to the industry and only have one client. I have a full-time job, engineering, one part-time job, door-to-door sales. I do this for personal growth reasons. I'm building a house, manage properties, and have a family. I have so little time, but I'm determined to grow the golf fitness business. My wife tells me I need to give some things up. How do I maximize my 2 hours per day that I can spend on my golf fitness passion? My ultimate goal is to leave my full-time job. All right, so where do I start on that one? So first thing is your wife might be slightly right. I don't want to, bother you too much by saying that, if that bothers you. There is a little bit, it does sound like you have a lot going on, and I would say that I'd want to just be aware that all those things are actually driving value for you. And if they are, great. And if it's worth the effort and you're getting the outcomes you want, then that's fine. I would just be very specific about how I am spending my time overall. But based on the two hours that you have per day, I ask about the golf business. Like, so what is the business model? How do you make money? Is it scalable? Do you have reoccurring revenue? What is the actual model? Is this a business that's going to grow into where you have multiple people and multiple locations and you have, employees and all that? Or is this you just want to build up your book of business and you're going to, then that's it. And then just to replace your engineering job, and then you're fine. That's fine too. Either one of those is an okay answer, but I would say be very clear on which of those two things it is. Yeah, and so like that's where I would put my focus first, is kind of determining that. And then honestly, after that, if I know that answer, then it really just comes down to, how am I going to find more clients? How do I get more clients? What's my process for doing that, as opposed to just running around and like grasping at straws, which is what most of us do in the early stages of sales. Is how do I do this in a consistent basis so that I can build a pipeline, so that I can build an audience of people who will listen to what I'm saying, and that I can capture some of them and turn them into clients. So that's where I would put my time in those 2 hours, is if I only have 2 hours, I'd put all that. And then I also question too, you said you have one client. So is that one client in those 2 hours, and how often does that person take up that time? Because the next problem you're going to run into is that you only have one client now, so you have 2 hours per day. Let's say that client takes up 2 hours per week. Now what happens when you have 5 or 6 clients? Now you're going to have zero time to focus on sales and growing and making sure that you have a pipeline of clients. So you're going to have to look at that. Again, it depends on what your objectives are and how you want to grow the business. If you're just trying to max out your own time and then you'll just kind of replace people as they fall off, or if you really want to grow, beyond what your own ability is within the to service each client yourself. So business model, business model, business model. I'm the business model guy. So you got to know how you make money, and you got to know how you connect to your audience. And sometimes that's a hard process to figure that out. Not sometimes, a lot of times that is. Okay, next question. What percentage of your dollars should be spent on advertising for a small retail business? I own a bridal store in a highly competitive market, one of 40 within 45 minutes drive of each other. Google, then Facebook, and Instagram are the best ways to reach new brides. While we have a niche and differentiate, our reviews are the best, they are still going to 3 to 5 stores on average, some even more. How do you curve that to one and done? Okay, so your general question is how much of your revenue should you be spending on marketing? So like you can come up with a number. I'm sure that in your industry there's a set number, like, oh, this is what everybody spends. In the hotel business, it's like, 5 to 7%. Coke and Pepsi spend 20% of their revenue plus on revenue. So the next thing that they do is, hold on one second here. Okay, so the next thing that they do is, hold on one second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so let me start that one over. I'm going to start that completely over. I just got distracted by some construction going on outside, but we stopped that. Okay, so back to percentages. What percentage of your dollars should be spent on advertising for a small retail business? I'm going to read this one over again just so we can start from scratch because I know we're recording these. So is that a race car? Yeah, exactly, Sean. It sounded like it. Okay, starting over. Lisa Filter. What percentage of your dollars should be spent on advertising for a small retail business? Own a bridal store. What percentage of What percentage of your dollars should be spent on advertising for a small retail business? I own a bridal store in a highly competitive market, one of 40 within 45 minutes drive of each other. Google, then Facebook, and Instagram are the best ways to reach new brides. While we have a niche and differentiate ourselves, our reviews are best. They are still going to 3 to 5 stores on average, some even more. How to carve that to one and done? Okay, so as I was saying, the hotel business is 5 to 7% of revenue. In your business, there's probably some similar percentage of revenue. In Coke and Pepsi, they spend like 20% of their revenue. So it doesn't really matter what the number is that you spend on your marketing. You should probably be generally within your industry. That's probably a good hint. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to how you spend those dollars, right? Are you spending those in the most productive way? Are you maximizing better than what your competition is? And it sounds like you got to remember too, that there's a difference between your sales activity and your marketing activities. And the way that you make reference here is it sounds like you're driving people into your store okay, I think. I mean, it depends on if I'm reading your paragraph here correctly. But if you are driving the proper volume in, but you're just not closing them, it's two different things. One is driving them in, and then the other is sales side, right? So once you have them in, how do we get them to close? How do we get them to make a decision right now? In your business, it's going to be particularly difficult because it's not just a logical decision that the bride is making, right? This is probably the least logical decision of all. And humans generally make emotional decisions in general, but in this particular case, highly emotional. So that's going to be your challenge, is getting your sales process working properly. So I would think really hard about that at this point. Maybe now that I think about it, if you think of it as two separate things, marketing is what drives them through the door, sales is what closes them. And if you think of it like that, you can do all the marketing in the world, and you could spend all your money driving people in the door, and you can get them in the door, but if they're not buying and they're not closing, then that's your issue. So I would focus my attention in the short term on knowing my conversion rates. For every person that walks through the door, how many of them buy on the first visit, on the second visit, on the third visit, however it works. Like I would know all my KPIs. Then I would do things to improve that effort. Like I would make changes to my sales process. I would actually like A/B test things. I'd have, for every third person that walks through the door, I would do this, and whatever. I would measure all that, and then see if I can increase the conversion rates from a walk through the door and a close. And if I can do that to a point where I can raise up my conversion rate on the sales side, and I know I'm getting people closed now I can start spending more money on marketing, and now I can try to drive people through the door. Because if you can't close them, which it sounds like that's part of the issue, is that we don't want them leaving. We want them buying now. That's going to be the constraint. That's going to be the hard part. So that's where I would put my focus on in this particular one before I focus on the investing more in marketing perspective. Although it sounds like you're doing pretty well anyway. Okay, so next one, Joe Nugent. I'm looking to hire a part-time salesperson for my home inspection company, and I'm having a challenge with determining how to pay their commission. Not sure if I do a flat fee or percentage of the sale to make it a win-win. I own a home inspection and home watch company in Florida. Okay, so here's the thing with salespeople. Salespeople love money. That's why they're salespeople. If they're good salespeople, they love money. If they're bad salespeople, then they love something else. But if they're really good salespeople, they probably love money. So you're going to need to lay out a plan for them that shows how they're going to maximize their money. Now, I don't know. Again, this goes back to business model discussion. This also goes back to a compensation incentive plan discussion. You have to know your business model, know what your margins are, know how much can be applied to your sales effort from an investment perspective. How much of the dollars that you take in can you pay out to a salesperson and to your sales and marketing effort in general? How all that breaks down. So know all that on paper. That's your kind of financials and business model perspective. Now you have to take whatever that is and apply that to your outreach to your salespeople as you try to hire salespeople. Now in that process, you're going to want to find salespeople that are focused on closing and maximizing how much they want to make, so that then you're going to make the most. So my question to you is, if you did do a flat fee, what type of salesperson are you going to get? And also it depends on what your price point is too. If your price point on your products can only afford a certain dollar amount, you got to take that into account too. You're not going to get a certain type of salesperson if the max that person can make is $40,000. If the max that person can make is $40,000, you're only going to get a certain type of salesperson at a certain level who's comfortable at $40,000. That doesn't mean they're bad. It just means you're going to get that type. And so you need to design your sales process from like an operational perspective, from a sales management perspective that facilitates that. For $40,000, you're not going to get here's your business card, go sell $1 million worth of stuff. Generally speaking, that's not the case. You might get lucky, but that's probably not going to happen. So you're going to need to think very deliberately about your sales process, your sales system, and how how somebody who executes that sales system, and it could be anybody, it doesn't have to be like a sales guy, it could be just someone who can follow a plan. That's the ideal world, where they can follow a plan good enough that and your sales system is good enough that they can just follow the steps and make some sort of result if they do it consistently. That's probably, I don't know where your price points are, but for sure that I would think that it's going to be something like that. So I would think very specifically about your sales process, document it, how it connects to your business model and your financials, and then start to have this question of, well, how do I pay this guy? Is it a flat fee? Is it a percentage? Is it an ongoing, you don't make a lot per sale, but you get to keep it forever if your revenue is recurring. I don't know. So yeah, that's where I would leave that one. All right, next one is McBon Najan Kenji. Should I niche out my general contracting business, or should I just improve my marketing to generate more relevant leads for what we do? Home remodeling. We have a family general contracting business, and we are losing many bids because contractors that focus on a certain area are beating us because it is not our true expertise. We are great at decks, but this is seasonal. We can also do kitchen and bathroom remodeling. I'm feeling like we don't have real focus. How or what should we do to get focused so our sales and marketing efforts gets maximized and we compete in the marketplace? Thanks. Okay, so first, I'm going to say a cliche that I think is like the stupidest sounding cliche, but it's really true. And I apologize if other people have said this before me, but it's a dumb sounding cliche, but it's true. Is niches get riches, or niches make riches, however you want to say it, because niches rhymes with riches. So that's funny. But it really is true. You have to stay focused. You've got to get niched up a little, like as you suggested. You've got to niche up. You're seeing it in the market. If somebody who is super highly focused on a niche, it's easier to find them and market to their audience. It's easier on your operations side to be the best at what you do and to do all that best at a price that's reasonable. So, and then when I say reasonable, I meant reasonable for you as well, because to the client, it may appear to be the same or maybe even less potentially than what someone else might charge. But because you're so highly focused and super efficient in that niche space, that you're able to, at that same price, make a much higher profit margin. So yeah, I think your inclination to focus on a niche is probably correct. Again, you go back to this idea of what's your business model, how does it all fit together, how does it connect to your audience, to your market, how do you practically sell to them, how do you practically market to them, what is the cost in your market to do that. Figuring all that stuff out on paper ahead of time can save you a lot of time and a lot of money by kind of answering those questions. And then the other thing is too, going back, I love A/B testing, right? So try to just put it out there. Create this new product or this new very focused niche and start trying to market it. You don't have to actually commit to it. Just start doing it and seeing if people respond to it. And if they don't, try a different niche. You're going to have to spend a little effort and time and maybe creating some website or marketing materials or something to kind of like pretend that this is what you do now. But try it and see what happens. And again, don't invest a lot of time worrying about the operational side or whatever. Put it out to the market, get the feedback, change the offering, put it back, change the offering, quote a few people at a price that you are happy with. And then if you don't close any of those, then go back, lower, I don't know, whatever. Like the point is that you don't have to have all of it figured out before you start. Just lay it all out on paper as best as you can, as a best guess. And then from there, put it out to the world. Even if you can't deliver on it, put it out to the world based on this theory and then see what they say. And then A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B as best as you can. And then before you know it, you're going to have a business model, you're going to have a marketing plan, you're going to have a sales plan, you're going to have all this stuff that all just works. And then you just scale it up from there. So don't jump over the experimental part of it. Experimentation in business is the key. And the longer you can take doing that, and the more focused you can be on that portion, the easier it is when you actually get to trying to scale it up. Okay, next question. Nigel Macy. How and where do I start to begin incorporating systems and processes into my massage therapy business? I'm about to finish massage school, get my license soon. I'm in the process of reinventing myself and I'm beginning a new career late in life. I want to do this one right from the ground up. I want to be automated and set everything up on virtual access. Ultimately, after I build my reputation in the massage therapy business, I want to be managing virtual systems and processes within or about the massage therapy business. Okay, cool. Well, congratulations on almost finishing school. That's awesome. And so I also love that you want to automate and you want to create all that stuff right from the beginning. A lot of times people wait till they're, you know, basically up the creek with things being inefficient and being, you know, losing lots of money because they're not able to handle the business that they have because they're such a mess. So I'm glad that you're thinking about this ahead of time. My question for you uh, is it seems like you're suggesting, and maybe I'm reading into this, but it seems like your business ultimately is not the massage itself that you would physically do with your own hands, but it's more of this virtual system and process that you're building for yourself. So you're building it for yourself to support your back office activities and to streamline all that stuff. But if I'm understanding, you want to then market that system to other people so that they can use it to handle their back office activities. If that's true, then awesome. If I read that right, then great. Then I think that's probably a good way to think about it. And even honestly, even if that wasn't the way you were thinking about it, in your planning, it's worth putting that in the back of your head, whether you do it or don't do it that way in the future. Think about it as if you were going to do it. Think of yourself as your own customer. What, as a customer, how would you supply that? Like, take two different hats. One hat, you're the massage therapist, and the other hat, you're this back office support company who helps the massage therapist. Think of it as two different things. What would that look like? Because if you do it that way, I think you'll probably find ways to support yourself better, and you'll figure out if you ever get busy, for example, which you probably will. If you're doing the physical work yourself, you're gonna need someone on your back office anyway. And if you build it this way, you'll already be set up to bring that person to help you with the back office, and they can just run your system that you put in just for you. Or of course, if you wanted to market that and sell that as a business in itself and sell that service to other people, then you're already set up to do that, and you've kind of built two businesses at once. So that's what I would do in that particular case. I would stay focused on providing that back office support to myself as a business, kind of. Cool. Bob Gagura, if you have an e-commerce website, how would the priority stack up of a quality copywriting versus overall website aesthetics? Can good copywriting overcome mediocre website aesthetics or vice versa? Here I am looking to figure out where my priority should be in terms of putting together knockout copyright or focus in on getting an appealing website. Response would weigh into what I should outsource and what tasks I should own. Okay. All right. So Bob, you're talking about aesthetics of the website versus copyright, whichever is going to drive e-commerce more, right? What's going to drive more sales? What's going to drive more conversions? That's what you're asking for. Which of those two things drives it the most? And the answer to that question is, I don't know, but I know how to figure it out. You figure it out with A/B testing. You need to. That's the only way. I mean, like think of like Craigslist from an aesthetics perspective. Craigslist is famous for having like no aesthetics, but yet has been around and remains relevant all these many years later. So it isn't a cookie cutter answer of like, well, it's copywriting, oh well, it's aesthetics. It comes down to, for your particular audience, for your particular brand, which of those two things. I mean, based on what you're selling, it says here ultra premium skincare. It's probably both. You probably can't have. Well, hold on. Let me back up. I'm not going to make that generalization, because you could build your brand around some niche-y, like kitschy, that's probably a better word, kitschy brand where it looks like all like a kindergartner put it together and da 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 da, and like I'm thinking of another brand that sells these little bags, like these little, it's like it's high fashion, these little bags that cost like $20,000 or whatever, and their brand is like this kind of like dingy street kind of thing, which I would have never put those two things together, but they're super successful. So the point is I guess it depends on what your brand is, and it depends on how your audience responds to it, and you either need to make a hard decision on that and just drive that all the way, and then it works or it doesn't work. Not my recommendation. Or you start to test. You just make some small changes, A/B test, put some audience across it, put some market across it, and then see where your conversion rates change, and then keep tweaking those that data, those conversion rates as you go along. I mean, Amazon is the king of this, right? That's why Amazon's Amazon, because they do this every single day across every product category, across the whole website. If we put this button slightly higher, what happens? It's the same thing with this. If our aesthetics look like this, what do our conversion rates look like? If our aesthetics look like that, what do our conversions look like? That sort of stuff. So that's where I would go with that as well. And I think that brings us to the end of our very exciting list of questions today. So thanks very much, everybody, for listening to me. I hope it was helpful. If there's anything I can do for you, I'm always available to any of you. Just reach out through AO. That is it. Have a good day. Later.